This is a segment that I'm pretty excited to be able to do. This is a segment about Uber and about rideshare and about how Uber's new pay algorithm is basically this big anti-worker scam. And, a bunch of you guys sort of tweeted this at me, messaged this to me. See, this is what's cool. This is why it's better to be a class warrior than a culture warrior, because they send Russell the Nazi shit and they send me stuff like this. So, yeah. So it's nice to be able to do this story. So I'm going to set this up here. So More Perfect Union did an investigation. They put out a video where they had suspected that the reason why Uber turned profitable recently is because they changed their driver pay algorithm, and they suspected that drivers were getting shafted. And so one guy who has a website called The Rideshare Guy, which I've heard of, sent them an email in response to that video, and they did a subsequent deeper dive. And so here is some video from this. There's a decent amount here, but we'll let this play mostly through.
Are rideshare companies offering drivers different rates for the same work? What I found put the legality of this whole tech revolution in question.
They have broken every single local, state, federal law when it comes to labor, when it comes to transportation.
That's Sergio Avedian. He sent me the email. He's an experienced driver and a senior contributor at The Rideshare Guy, an influential resource for gig economy workers.
We were used to something called a rate card. We were used to getting paid by time and distance.
Then, overnight, the transparency vanished, replaced by a secret algorithm that takes into account potentially hundreds of different variables. They called it upfront pricing.
Okay, so just to clarify what they mean by that, you used to have a rate card depending on which zone you were driving in. So my zone was the Mid-Hudson Valley. The rate card says you get 70 cents a mile plus 18 cents a minute. So if you're driving city streets, 70 cents a mile, you're averaging 30 miles an hour. So it takes you 2 minutes to drive 1 mile. So you're basically getting paid $1.06 a mile, which is barely worth doing because the IRS allows you to deduct 56 cents per mile of driving as an expense. So really, you're only profitable after 56 cents a mile. So $1.06, that's not a lot of wiggle room. Not at all. But that's what they used to do. They recently changed it, where they just quote you a price up front based on variables that you don't know. Only they do.
Uber's losses turned to profits around that same time. Coincidence? I don't know. Lyft followed suit, and now they claim they're on the path to profitability.
The algorithms are set up in a way to charge the rider as much as it's possible and to pay the driver as little as possible.
A lot of drivers feel Uber and Lyft are paying different wages for the same rides. But we don't really know because the companies, they aren't talking.
We're doing a very simple thing. We're picking up people point A to dropping off point B. I shouldn't make less money than the next guy. I should not. But because it's not regulated, because we don't have rate cards, because we don't know what we're going to make, trip to trip, it's demoralizing, it's upsetting.
So with Sergio's help, we decided to test it. We called 7 experienced drivers to a high traffic area in Los Angeles with the sole purpose of testing if rideshare companies are paying different rates for the same rides. At the start, each driver will activate their screen capture software, open up the app, and place their phones on the table. Why the table? Sergio has done similar experiments, and the rate disparities were blamed on location differences. When the experiments are done, the drivers will send their screen recording to Sergio's team, who will then sync and analyze the fares. And then we're going to see what's really going on.
I want to know how many of these drivers got porn alerts on their phone during the screen recording.
Right, yeah, exactly.
He's getting paid $1 more if he goes there, according to the map, and nobody else is. Nobody else is seeing that dollar surge.
We found that Uber offered the same rides 46 times to multiple drivers. 63% of the time, one of the drivers was offered a bit less money for the exact same ride.
They want to make few pennies difference, and few pennies on 2.7 billion trips a quarter, which is from the last earnings report, is millions, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Lyft was even worse. The price gap wasn't just a little off, it was a lot off. We saw differences of up to $3 to $4 after bonuses. And drivers don't know why one person gets a bonus and another doesn't.
Well, that adds up like on 30 trips to $10 a day. That's $300 a month. Why should I get paid less, $300 a month, than the other guy?
I contacted Uber and Lyft to see how they would calculate fares. Lyft, well, they never responded. Uber directed me to a blog post. When I explained the experiment's results, they replied by copying and pasting a portion of that same blog post. The section outlines different reasons drivers could see different fares. But we controlled for everything that we could. We called the drivers to the same space, placed their phones inches apart, had drivers monitoring incoming promotions, and constantly refreshing their screen. The only thing we didn't account for was any secret test Uber could have been running at the time, which we couldn't because the fare algorithm is secret and the test is secret. Uber and Lyft.
Okay, so before we get into this next part here, I just want to pause there for a minute. What do I tell you about big tech, whether it's a platform like YouTube, Facebook, the arrogance and laziness of these people? So they have a journalist emailing them about shenanigans in their pay algorithm, and they do not even bother to craft a response. They copy and paste, generic pablum from a blog post to say this is what we do, knowing that this guy is probably going to try and nail them if he catches them doing something shady, which of course he now is. No, just copy and paste off of the blog, send it to him, Get rid of him, fuck him, fuck them. Like, the arrogance is just unbelievable. Secondly, it was a little hard to cut in because the timing was awkward. They found a pretty consistent gender pay gap where the women drivers were offered less.
Really?
Now, is there an algorithm? Is the algorithm set to offer women less? Maybe. They may figure, hey, women on average are not as good at negotiation as men, right? They're more likely to take a bad deal than men, right? And so we can offer them less on average. You don't know that. You don't know any of this because it's all a secret. But obviously, the fares are generally based on mileage, distance traveled. And so the fact that they're all sitting next to each other on the table means there should be no difference in fare. And you used to have a rate card. So the fare was explained to you after the passenger got out of the car and you ended the ride on your app. You would get an explanation of why you were paid what you were. Okay, whatever, $2 base, plus, whatever, $3.50 for 4.5 miles plus X amount of dollars for time. It would all be added up. It would be an itemized breakdown. They don't have that anymore. Now, when you get a ping, it tells you where you are, obviously, where the pickup is, where the drop off is, the total mileage, and total pay. And what I noticed, because on occasion what I would do is if it was a really slow day driving food around, I would turn on the passenger app just to see if there were any rides worth doing. I didn't accept a single one because the pay was all horrible. It's all much worse. Right. You get less than $1 a mile now. Now, after back when I did this full time, this was pre-inflation flare up, pre-gas price flare up. You're making less gross now than you were before inflation and before gas prices went through the roof. Like, at this point, I really don't know how you could do this full time, especially since the pay algorithm is secret. Now,
hang on. Now you were still doing it part time through December, right?
Through December when of last year?
Yeah,
I was doing it through December. Yeah, but food only. Food, you make more per mile. The passenger stuff I haven't done in a long time. But what I was saying is, on a slow day, if I wasn't getting food and I had the back seat empty, I would turn on the passenger app to see if any rides were worth taking, and they're not. They're horrible. Now, this next part gets into how these Uber drivers are classified as independent contractors, but with no control or even insight into how much they are getting paid. All right, so this is what this next part is.
And the test is secret. Uber and Lyft classify drivers as independent contractors, not employers, a crucial distinction. As an employee, you're making money for someone else, which means benefits, protections, and a boss who can tell you what time to show up. But as an independent contractor, you're supposedly making money for yourself, with no benefits or protections, but freedom. You're your own boss.
If these drivers are, as you say, independent, then they need to have true economic independence. We allege that the companies have denied them that economic independence, most importantly, by taking away their ability to set prices for themselves.
But right now, Uber and Lyft set prices for riders and wages for drivers to maximize one thing: their own profits.
Now, just a note here, they did beta test back in 2020, allowing California drivers to set their own rates. And that program was discontinued after 1 year because riders canceled more than usual. So there was a window of time where they tried that out, but they took that back. Now, that was back when you had rate cards. Now you don't even have rate cards. Now you just see the price they're offering you. You have no idea what that's based on. Okay, here we go.
Drivers are left out.
Uber and Lyft are saying we're not one company, right? We're just a platform, and all of our drivers are independent business people. Under our antitrust laws, they need to have the economic independence to set their own prices.
We heard something similar at our roundtable discussion after the experiment. Every participant wanted to be an independent contractor. They like the freedom. They also want Uber and Lyft to treat them like actual independent contractors.
It's an important point. I've made this point when we've covered this topic in the past. Obviously, with the genocide going on, we haven't done too many rideshare segments recently. But I always said, the fight to classify them as employees is not necessarily the right fight. Most drivers don't want to be employees. They don't want to be told when to show up, what to wear, how long they have to be on a shift.
Right.
Part of the pleasure of doing this is the freedom to just turn on the app whenever you want, whenever you need a few bucks extra this week or whatever. The problem is not that they are classified as independent contractors. The problem is they're not being treated like independent contractors. Like, if you actually treat them correctly as independent contractors, they would like to be treated as independent contractors. The problem is Uber is not honoring that arrangement. Sorry, do you have anything?
Yeah, that's really common to people with independent contractor agreements. Most of my work life outside of owning my own theaters has been as an independent contractor. As a horse and carriage driver, you're an independent contractor. As a tour guide, usually you're an independent contractor. Those are the better paying gigs. So that's mostly what I did. But none of them treat you like an independent contractor. An independent contractor, you're supposed to be able to pick and choose whether or not you want to work. It's not like that. I mean, in the end, with the horse and carriage, you had a schedule, man. You had to show it. You couldn't just be like, no, I'm not. I don't want to work
that's
today.
not it. Yeah, that's definitely an abuse of that arrangement. Yeah.
But you're under an independent. Now with tours, you can turn them down.
Right.
But unlike Uber, it's even worse. Well, then you just won't work. They'll just stop calling you. They'll stop giving you a job. So you don't really have this flexibility as a rule. Usually independent contractor agreements are a way of getting around paying benefits and taking responsibility for the employees. That's really why they want that agreement. Independent contractor arrangements where they don't get pushback from the workers are ones like what I did, where what you're getting paid is good enough that you're not going to break balls about it.
Right. And this is not even close.
This is not the
that,
case.
As we will see.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go.
When I don't have a control over the pricing and you keep calling me an independent contractor, there's something very wrong with that picture.
And for drivers dependent on the rideshare platforms to make a living, it's hard when you're making under minimum wage.
Especially for people that do this full time. In California, they're working 70 to 80 hours just to put food on the table, which is really, really rough.
If you look at who's on the board of both of these companies,
Here it comes.
it tells you that we have nobody on our side, right? When the general counsel of Uber is Tony West and he's the brother-in-law of Kamala Harris, then it tells you that these companies are tight with government. Why does Uber win? Well, because it's rigged in their favor, right?
That's right. Now, a couple of points I want to make here. First of all, because you are an independent contractor and there's no like career advancement within Uber, it's not even like they don't even throw you a bone like, hey, if you do 1,000 rides, we increase your mileage rate by 2 cents. Like, no, nothing. There's no, hey, show us a certain amount of loyalty and we will reward you for it. No. Your labor situation gets worse because they come up with plans to screw you. The longer you work there, the more the company grows, the more they come up with schemes to pay you less, not more. DoorDash does this too now, where they've created this incentive program where if you accept more than 50% of the offers, we'll give you priority access to the high-paying orders, which is an absolute scam because in order to make money doing it, you have to have the autonomy to turn down the low-paying offers. Otherwise, you're going to spin your wheels all day driving 8 miles for $4, right? But they incentivize you to do that. They incentivize you to accept more shitty offers, and they dangle the carrot in front of your face. If you do those, excuse me, we'll give you priority access to the good orders, which come around once every hour and a half, where it's $9 for a mile. It's a scam. They do it to fuck you over. Uber,
like a
same
slot
thing.
machine.
Right, exactly. It is like a slot machine now. Now it is you're playing a game. Uber, it's literally like that. It's funny. You took the words right out of my mouth. That was my exact next point. Uber has now taken all of the math out of it. Now it is literally like sitting down at Vegas, throwing a coin in the slot and seeing what you get. They just say, okay, you're driving 16 miles for $13, which again, that's not even $1 a mile. 56 cents a mile. What the government has determined is that it basically costs the average person 56 cents to drive a car 1 mile when you factor in gas, wear and tear on the vehicle, registration fees, blah, 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 right? So if you're making 85 cents a mile, I mean, that's nothing. Let's say you work for an hour and you make $25, but you had to drive 30 miles to make that $25. Well, what's 0.56 times 30? What is it, $17? So you really only profited $8 an hour at the end of the day. Basically, what you're doing is you're borrowing money against the value of your car. That's basically what you're doing, right? You're not actually profiting. You're not actually growing your prospects in life. You're just borrowing the money against the value of the car that you owe in a car or that you sank into the car. That's basically what you're doing when you drive for these companies. And the longer you do it, the more they come up with ways to screw you over. Now DoorDash has this thing. Hey, you can opt in to receive a guaranteed hourly rate as long as you accept 90% of the offers. That's, again, another screw job. They're trying to get you to take lousy offers to put lots of miles on the car for very little money. So unlike an employment situation where you grow within the company, here you shrink within the company. You get screwed more and more the longer you work for them. And that last part that guy said, Kamala Harris's brother-in-law is on the board at Uber. Kamala Harris clinks wine glasses with the people who are doing this to these workers, to these drivers. They are very clear about who their enemies are and who they have to organize against. And this is a point that I want to make because, we've been talking a lot about Darryl Cooper and the sort of edgelord industrial complex, as I've sort of branded it, right? These sort of really edgy people who have alternate histories and theories and, they delve into conspiracy and things like that. Notice none of them will ever have an Uber driver on the show. None of them will ever have a labor organizer on the show.
Exactly.
They don't have people on their show. They don't highlight people who actually know who the enemies are. Right. These people, these con artists, they want to convince you that the people who are making your life horrible are these shadowy figures who you'll never really identify. They are behind the scenes and that everything is being orchestrated out of sight. And they think that doing that, you think that you're getting red pilled when you go down those rabbit holes, but you're not. You're just being scammed. The conspiracy is right in front of you. They're fucking you right in front of your face, in your face. And these drivers know exactly who they are, right? And the project of like getting people wondering and thinking and curious about what's really going on, right? Well, that becomes an intellectual project for yourself, right? And the more you do that, the more you sort of pursue this hidden truth, the less aware you can be of the fact that the people screwing you are right in front of you. You're working for them, dude. You're driving for them. If you're an Uber driver, right, going down those rabbit holes, guess what? The people fucking you are the people who own Uber. It's not that complicated. Right. Now, it doesn't have to be an either or thing. I'm a conspiracy theorist myself. I've delved down these rabbit holes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it should be noted. It should be noted. Tucker will not bring an Uber driver on his show. Tucker will not bring the rideshare guy on his show to talk about how they're getting fucked because they want to keep the
CEO of Uber to confront him.
Or the CEO of Uber. They want to keep the problem as abstract as possible.
Right.
Because it is not possible to fight an abstract enemy except for the project of strengthening yourself. That's why a lot of these guys, they hawk supplements. You watch the Alex Jones show, they hawk supplements, right? The project of fighting, how do you fight back against the shadowy force who's making your life horrible? strengthen yourself, right? What, eat red meat, get married, have children, lift weights, pray to God. And there's nothing wrong with doing any of those things. I do most of those things except for the last one. But that's not politics. That's a lifestyle brand. Just like the libs sell LGBT as a lifestyle brand, and that substitutes for like a political conviction. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. People who ignore this, they sell lifestyle brand as a substitute for political thinking and political action. The action is right here in front of you. That Uber driver there, he was red-pilled. He was as red-pilled as he has to be. Kamala Harris's brother-in-law is tight with Uber. These people go to the same cocktail parties. They laugh together while their friends get rich off of us sitting in our car 12 hours a day, getting fat and sick off of junk food while we eke out not even a modest living. Some of them don't even make rent. So, I mean, you're struggling to keep up with, you're struggling to put food on the table, as he said. That's who's fucking you. It really is as simple as that on the surface level. Now, you want
to not one immigrant involved in that. Not one immigrant to blame.
Doesn't matter.
For that.
Wouldn't matter.
This is what they want to focus you on. It's not the immigrant that is fucking over the Uber drivers. It's not the immigrant who's causing these problems. It's the CEO. This is what I mean when I talk about the peasant mind. They're and not accidentally. A lot of the people who complained about the Cooper segment also brought up the minimum wage segment. Listen, they have trained you to hate yourself. They have trained you to hate your class. They have directed you just like a horse with a bit. They have steered you towards everything except for your class enemies. In fact, they've got you so programmed that you will attack anyone who tries to point out who your actual enemies are. And instead, they've got you attacking your own class.
Please clap.